I was just finishing my beer when I noticed Jim walked through the door. After walking him to the end of the bar, I turned to the bartender. "Hank, give me 2 more, please," Jim said, sitting down on the bar stool next to me. "What was so important we had to meet at the bar in the middle of the day?" he inquired. By this time, Hank had brought the beer, and I raised my mug to Jim. "Here's to friendship," I said as we touched bottles. "Jim, I've known you for 8 years, and for 6 of those years, you've been my best friend," I began. "You're the only person I feel close enough to tell my story to," I said, looking sadly at the floor. "I assume your wife, Vicky, has told you that Carol and I have had a lot of problems over the last 6 months," I said without even looking at Jim. No matter what I said or did, it was always wrong. Everyone told me that since she was going through a life change, her body chemistry was off and she shouldn't worry about it. But that's easy to say and hard to do. About 3 months ago, we had a real breakup. I wanted to fool around, and Carol wasn't interested. I probably should have left it at that, but it had been weeks since we'd been close, and I was more than angry, I said, taking a big gulp. I told her that if she didn't want to sleep with me anymore, I'd find someone who would. I know it was stupid, and as soon as it came out, I told her I was talking through my ass, but she freaked out. "If you find any, take action," Carol yelled as she ran upstairs. I ran after her apologizing, but she slammed and locked our bedroom door.
"Carol, honey, I'm sorry."
"It was stupid. You know I love you," I told her, but she just told me to leave. Damn, I really screwed up this time, I thought to myself. I spent the next 2 nights in the guest room, and Carol didn't say a word to me unless she needed to. "Jim, you have no idea how hard it is to live in a house with a loved one who refuses to talk to you," I told him. It went on like that for about a month when I finally had enough. We were sitting at the dining room table, eating dinner, and I put my fork away and looked at her. "Carol, if you don't talk to me tonight, I'm going to move out tomorrow and talk to a lawyer about a divorce," I told her, hoping that my bluff would get her out of this rotten mood, or at least get her to yell at me. When she didn't even confirm my words, I got up, went upstairs, packed a few things in my suitcase, and walked out. Well, Jim, we were both bluffing. I ended up staying at a motel near work and turned off my cell phone because at that point, I had nothing more to say to Carol. On Thursday, I went to work as usual and left my cell phone off until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I finally turned it on. I had 15 messages from Carol. In the first 8, she was yelling at me and telling me how shitty I was, and to call her when I pulled my head out of my ass. In the next 6, Carol was more subdued and asked me to call her cell phone so we could talk. In the last message, she was crying and asked me not to contact a lawyer until I talked to her, and please call her as soon as possible. I looked at Jim and gestured for Hank to pour us another drink. "Damn, Ken, I didn't realize things were so bad between you two. Vicky just said you're going through a rough time and that, like Carol said, you're dealing with it," he said as he took a sip from the last bottle. "Damn it, Jim, why didn't you say anything to me? You know I'm always there for you," he said as he hugged me. After work, I went back to my motel and waited until 6 o'clock before calling Carol. She answered on the second ring. I asked if she wanted to talk some more, and she timidly said yes. I told her to meet me at Angelo's in an hour, and we would have dinner and talk. When we got there, she wanted to talk, but I told her to wait until after dinner or the waiter would interrupt us every 15 minutes. We ate in silence, and when our coffee was brought to us, I told the waiter to leave us alone for a while. "Jim, come home. I miss you," Carol said with tears in her eyes. "I know we can get through this because I know you still love me, even after what you said last night," she said, almost crying. "I know I've been a little out of sorts lately, but I'll work on it. Just don't shut me out," she told me. "Don't let me near you," I said a little too loudly. "You haven't let me touch you in months," I told her. "And when you did let me, it was like I was getting pity sex from you. Like, here I am. Let me know when you're done." People started looking in our direction, and the waiter came back to ask if we needed anything else. I asked him to bring me a double brandy because I figured I would need it for the rest of the evening. "Carol, I thought that when the kids left, we already had everything. We could come and go at will, make love on the kitchen table if we wanted to. Hell, there was no one at home to worry about, but you pulled away from me every time I tried to initiate something. You always had an excuse: you're too tired, you have a headache, you're too busy, or you're just not in the mood. Hell, you've never been in the mood, I told her. Carol lowered her gaze to the table because she knew Jim was right. Her hormones were out of whack, and she seemed to always be in a bad mood. The only person she could talk to was Jim, which she did if work wasn't going right, if dinner wasn't what she wanted it to be, or if she thought Jim was mocking her. She let him talk, and that was probably almost every night. Jim, all I can say is that I'm sorry. When we started living as a couple, it really hit me hard. It was just the two of us for the first time since we'd been married. You started acting like a teenager again, wanting sex every night, and my hormones were out of control. I just wasn't in the mood like you. That doesn't mean I loved you any less. I just didn't have your sex drive. I thought you'd get tired of it, but the more we did it, the more you wanted it, and I couldn't win, she said, looking at her, watery-eyed. I guess I pulled away because I felt like I was being used like a piece of meat, and I didn't like it, she told him. I got angry that night because I sensed that you didn't care what I thought anymore, and you just wanted to rest, she said with a smile. You know, after all these years, you and I really do fit together like a comfortable pair of gloves. I realized what she meant, and I guess it was both of our faults because neither of us wanted to talk about it with the other. Carol, I love you more than you can imagine, and sometimes I just want to crawl inside you to be even closer to you. But I guess I went a little overboard. But I had to follow through, or we'd never talk about it. I stood up and walked over to her side of the table and kissed her. Let's go home. Jim, I'd like to say everything was perfect after that, but I'd be lying. The makeup sex was great, but after a week or two, she started pulling away again. Hell, I wasn't going to go through all that again, so I started dating her. What? Jim asked. What the hell do you mean you started dating her? It's just that, Jim, I started treating her the same way I did when we first started dating. Now I called her to ask how her day was, brought home flowers, took her shopping, and even cooked dinner for her when she came home at least 3 times a week for a while. Carol looked at me strangely, but after 3 weeks, she got over it and just went with the flow, which is what got me to where I am now. I decided to take another step forward. I felt she was a little off this week and I wasn't sure why, so I planned a honeymoon weekend. I took Friday off and told her I needed to go out of town for the day, but I'd be home by 10:30 in the evening. I packed a bag and played it safe. I had breakfast at Denny's and then planned my day. I made reservations at a new French restaurant, bought a box of her favorite chocolates, and booked a honeymoon suite at the Ritz. Then I went to the mall and bought a tight black dress that Carol had had her eye on for a month and shoes to go with it. Finally, I went into Victoria's Secret and found some sexy lingerie. Not just sexy, if you know what I mean. Oh, my plan was starting to come to fruition. I packed everything up and headed home to be ready for Carol's arrival. I noticed something was wrong as soon as I walked into the house. I put everything on the kitchen table, and that's the only time I heard it. Oh, damn it. Give it to me, I heard a voice say. At first, I thought Carol had left the TV on the cable channel and quietly went upstairs. The voices were coming from our spare room, and I realized something was wrong. I leaned against the wall in the hallway and listened. I bet your weak husband can't give you as much pleasure as I did. The boys giggled. Oh God. That feels so good. Don't stop. Damn it, I heard her scream. I went numb and wanted to run away, but my legs wouldn't obey. Damn it, Jim. I wanted to cry, to scream, but all I could do was just stand there and listen. I ran down the stairs and managed to open the front door before I stopped. This was my house and I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't the one cheating upstairs. Jim, remember a couple of years ago when we tried target shooting? Well, I saved that gun and kept it in my desk in the living room. I went there, got it, and headed back upstairs. Ken, please tell me you didn't do anything stupid, Jim said with a concerned look on his face. Even though I wanted to kill them both, I didn't. Hell, I didn't even have the ammo to do it, I told Jim. So here I am, standing in the hallway outside the door, listening to them having sex. When I walked into the room, Jim, they didn't even notice me. I must have stood there with that stupid gun in my hand for at least a minute, wondering what to do next. Finally, I reached out and flicked the switch that got their attention. It was that damn freak, Dan, from down the street. I told Jim. I didn't like him before, and now I hated the bastard. You know the stories about how when someone gets caught, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, well, they're right. It's not what it looks like. It's just sex, and please don't shoot us. That's all they bloody said. I said, finishing my beer. Do you want another? Jim asked. No, better not. I'm going to need a clear head tonight when I talk to Carol. I told him. They just sat on the bed and cowardly begged me not to shoot them. Finally, when the initial shock wore off, I told them they had 1 minute to get their crooked asses out of my house, or I'd reduce them both to the grave. Hell, they both flew out the door along with their clothes in 30 seconds. The last thing I saw was their asses heading toward Dan's house. After that, I didn't even bother to lock the front door. I just got in my car, drove here and called you. And now you're up to date. Jim was silent for a long time, continuing to swirl the bottle of beer on the bar. Finally, I broke the silence. If it was you, Jim, what would you do? Man, it's complicated. You and Carol have been together for over 20 years. Are you ready to divorce her and start over? I think you need to talk to her and ask her how long it's been going on and if she still loves you, Jim said to me. Jim, think about it. How can a woman cheat on her husband and still claim to love him? It's an oxymoron at best. And what difference does it make if it's been 1 time or 20? I asked him. Look, Ken, I know you're angry and justifiably so, but you need to talk to her before you do something you'll regret later, Jim told me. Think about it. Are you better off with her or without her? Hell, Ken, that Dan could have drugged her for all you know. But first of all, I'd put the creep down and then I'd do something else. I'd go over to his house tonight and tell his wife, Karen, what a lowlife she's married to. I'd probably want to beat the crap out of him, but he's not worth going to jail over. Jim looked Ken straight in the eye and said, Buddy, I support you no matter what you decide, but if it were me, I'd find any way I could to patch things up with Carol, because you two are a good match. It became very quiet for a few minutes as he continued to twist the empty beer bottle on the counter. Jim, I'm glad you feel that way because I have something important to tell you, I said, turning to face him. It wasn't my wife who slept with Dan. It was your wife, Vicky. I told him, waiting for his reaction. I saw steam come out of Jim's ears as he exploded. I'm going to kick her ass when I get home tonight, he yelled as everyone turned to look at us. Ken, then what's this about you talking to Carol tonight? He asked. I have to find out why she let those two use our house to make a cuckold out of my best friend. I don't think I can forgive her for that, I told Jim. Just remember what you told me. Listen to Vicky before you do something stupid. That girl better be both drunk and drugged if she wants to come into my house again. Jim yelled as he ran out of the bar. When I got home, Carol was waiting for me. She had already seen the dress, shoes, and everything else on the kitchen table. Vicky had called Carol at work and told her that I had walked in on her and Dan and that I was very angry. I walked past Carol, went to the refrigerator, and grabbed a beer. Then, grabbing a kitchen chair, I sat down at the breakfast island and asked her, What the hell were you thinking when you let Vicky and Dan cheat on Jim under our roof? Carol clenched her hands into fists, searching for the right words. I didn't want to, but Vicky talked me into it. The first time they had fun in Dan's car and wanted to do it in bed, she said in almost a whisper. Carol felt like I was a time bomb about to explode. I don't care what those two wanted. I want to know why the hell you let them do it here, I said as calmly as I could. I just spent the last hour with Jim telling him the sad story of how his wife cheated on him without telling him it was his wife, Vicky. I wanted to see what his reaction would be if he thought it was you and Dan. Carol made an indignant look on her face and said, I would never cheat on you, Ken. I love you too much for that. But Carol, you were a big part of their cheating. You gave them a safe place to do it. Do you realize that? I know Vicky is your best friend, but you're friends with Jim too, and he's my best friend. Don't you know how I look at it? His best friend's wife is helping him cuckold him. I don't think we'll ever be the same, I shouted at her. Carol looked down with a sad expression on her face. Right now, I hate you for being so damn stupid. I told her. I had an amazing weekend planned, and now I can't stand the sight of you. What would you do if Jim let me use his house to cheat on you with another woman, and Vicky came over? I guess it goes both ways now, doesn't it? Carol, I'm not going to argue with you, and I don't even want to talk to you right now, I said as I stood up. Thank you for ruining my wonderful weekend, sweetheart, I said as I slowly walked up the stairs and slammed our bedroom door. Carol cried until she fell asleep on the living room couch. I left Saturday morning and was gone for almost 2 weeks. Carol tried to call me, but I didn't return her calls. When I got home, I threw the guest room bed in the trash, ripped out the carpet, and repainted the room. When it was done, I moved into the guest room and lived there for almost 2 months. My kids tried to talk to me because they knew there were problems on the home front, but all I said was, "Talk to your mom." Jim and Vicky tried to patch things up, but after 3 weeks they broke up. 2 months later, Jim filed for divorce, much to the dismay of both of them. Vicky still wanted to try, but Jim wasn't sure he could trust her again. Jim only talks to me when I call him, and he hasn't crossed my threshold since that day. He's respectful of Carol, but I know how he really feels about her. Dan's wife kicked him out of the house and divorced him. Now their house is up for sale, and Karen has moved back into her parents' house with the kids. Dan was leaving a bar one night and got the crap beaten out of him. Because of the beating he received, he will never father children again. The police questioned Jim about where he was that night. I told them he was playing cards with me and Carol, so no charges were filed. We owed him a big debt of gratitude. And now I'm sitting here. My best friend is gone. I hardly talk to my wife anymore, and the neighbors are spreading rumors about what they think happened and who was involved. I'm thinking about putting the house on the market, but I would take a huge loss in that market, and I can't afford it right now. The only things that have stayed the same are the black dress, the shoes, the chocolates, and the dead rose that still sits on my kitchen table. It has become almost a shrine to what we almost had and how something between us died that day. Do I still love Carol? Yes, I do. But do I trust her? Not really. She says she never cheated on me, but now I'm plagued with doubts. We don't make love anymore, but we have sex from time to time. But it's not the same. One night, Carol got angry and said, "I can't live like this anymore." She screamed. I went to the front door, opened it, and told her, "If you want to leave, I'll hold the door open for you," whereupon she fell silent.